Hi everyone, I am making this video to talk about health and specifically my health. I have alluded in the past, in previous posts, that I have issues with my immune system, and what that means I haven't exactly clarified. I didn't clarify it because one, I don't want sympathy, and two, I didn't want to be TMI, too much information. I didn't want it to be weird. I don't know. I was too much in my head. But now I'm realizing that by talking about it, there is one, the opportunity to potentially help someone. Two, I'm going to give a face to a rare genetic disease. And three, I could potentially raise awareness about this category of rare genetic diseases. So I was recently diagnosed with Yao syndrome, which falls under the category of autoinflammatory diseases, which is not to be confused with autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases are things such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. In autoimmune diseases, it is your adaptive, keyword adaptive, immune system that creates antibodies to attack itself. In autoinflammatory disease, it is your innate immune system that believes there is a foreign invader when there is not, and you get systemic inflammation and your body just goes nuts. So what that means and how that manifests itself, you could get fever, which is the most common, rash, stomach ache, flu-like symptoms, exhaustion, dry eyes, dry mouth, mouth sores, hearing loss, eye problems, inflammation of your feet, hands, etc. Could go to your kidneys and you could get protein in your kidneys. So yeah, there's a lot of ways it can manifest itself, but essentially you just have systemic inflammation because your body thinks there is a foreign invader and it's trying to fight off a foreign invader that isn't there. So I'll tell you a little bit about my diagnostic journey and how I came about this diagnosis. So when I was younger, I definitely was someone who got sick more than a normal kid. However, it was never enough to really raise a red flag. I thought I just had a shitty immune system, which technically I do, but I thought that, it was never frequent enough to be alarmed, but I definitely was one of those kids that used up all my absences, and sometimes I would get self-conscious that I looked like a hypochondriac. Now, it wasn't until 9th grade when I was 14, not many people actually know this, but I got really sick, missed over a month of school, had all my lymph nodes enlarged throughout my body, especially my neck, rock hard. Actually, some of them are still rock hard from this experience. I had a fever, I lost like 10 pounds in a short period of time. I felt like I had the flu, I felt just awful. And when I went to the doctor, my blood work was all out of whack, enough so that he sent me from the office to an oncologist, which is a cancer doctor. They were convinced that I had lymphoma. I forget if it was non-Hodgkin's or Hodgkin's. I honestly forget the difference, but they thought that I had lymphoma, which is a cancer of the lymph nodes. I didn't, and I was under the care of an oncologist for about a year, and then it was eventually chalked up as a freak virus, which now, as I look back and I've talked to my doctors, we have determined that that was one of my original flare-ups of my disease. Now, throughout college, I got sick a lot too, often after drinking. So I thought maybe I had an allergy to alcohol. I would get just flu-like symptoms after drinking, sometimes even a fever, and I was like, maybe I just get really bad hangovers, or I guess I reached that age where I can't drink anymore. Or I thought maybe even I had an alcohol allergy, so I stopped drinking for a while, and it helped in ways, but it didn't help me from feeling better. But again, the duration of time between me getting sick was never enough to raise a red flag. It was just enough to make me feel like I was a little bit crazy and maybe got sick more than a normal person. Like I felt a little bit like a hypochondriac, but again, it wasn't enough. I didn't need to be hospitalized or anything. So then 2018 Golden Gloves, actually it's called Ringmasters now, but I had an issue where when I went to the bathroom there was blood. I didn't address that issue until after the tournament. Again, this is something I just kept inside. I went from my regular doctor to a gynecologist. The gynecologist thought I had an autoimmune disease. I went from the gynecologist to an infectious disease doctor. The infectious disease doctor thought, you don't have an infectious disease, but you probably have an autoimmune disease. Went from there to a rheumatologist, which is a doctor that deals with autoimmune diseases. I tested negative for all the antibodies, but I had markers for systemic inflammation, but I was negative for an autoimmune disease. I then got sent to a neurologist to make sure it wasn't multiple sclerosis, and everything just came back negative, but they put me on a drug, prednisone, which is a steroid, felt better, ignored it, bam. 2019, I get really sick again, right before Golden Gloves again, 2019. There's a trend here, cutting weight triggered it, and also that level of training and fighting back to back triggered it. But I was super sick when I fought that night, and after that I collapsed once during training with no known reason. Again, I chased doctors and didn't get any answers, and I just sort of chalked it up to overtraining, and it was very frustrating. But again, I started to ignore it. I would go to training. After training, I would get rashes. I would feel really sick. Sometimes I would sit in the Epsom salt bath and think I had the flu to try to get rid of it. I used to get flu tests all the time. I didn't tell anyone, but I would go get rapid flu tests because I thought I had the flu, and they would come back negative, and it would be terribly embarrassing. I would go to different urgent cares because I was so embarrassed about like thinking I had the flu and then not having it. Like, I felt like a hypochondriac, but I knew my body didn't feel right. And around, I guess, 2020, it was really becoming a problem, like right before COVID, 2019, 2020. And even my coach at the time mentioned that this was probably something that I have to consider when it comes to fighting. And I got COVID 2021. After I got COVID, it like really just made my immune system go insane. And since I've gotten COVID, I get a fever every other week. Sometimes I feel like I can't walk. I don't tell anyone about this because I don't want to appear weak, because I'm not weak, but I do have something, and that is the reality of it. I sometimes can't get out of bed. Some days I have a fever for multiple days. I get embarrassing rashes all over my body, and this led me to my diagnosis, which was sort of a serendipitous moment. But I called a rheumatologist off a recommendation. He was no longer there in the office, so they sent me to another rheumatologist. That rheumatologist ended up studying under this guy who studies autoinflammatory diseases, and she was very suspicious that I have one. I go, his name is Dr. Yao. He discovered the disease that I have, so very serendipitous. But I went there, told him all my symptoms, showed him all the pictures of my rashes. We had a biopsy rash, which was also ended up being something that was similar to his disease that he discovered. And then the big test was a genetic test, which if I had one certain mutation, I had Yao syndrome. I had that mutation, and I actually came back positive for a second mutation, which means I also have a second autoinflammatory disease, but that disease is still to be determined because it could be one of two, and I need more testing to figure that out. Essentially, I go on medication that will help with inflammation, and I have to see if that works. 50% of the time it will work. If it doesn't work, I go on biologics, which are like a vaccine is a biologic, cancer medication is a biologic. It comes from, I believe, a living organism. You can Google that, I could be wrong. But the whole point of this is to, one, if you are sick and you don't have answers, you might want to consider this. Two, if you have one of these diseases, I want to be someone that shows you it's not gonna be the end of the world. You can still do things. There are ways to get better, and I can even give you contact information of my doctor, who's amazing. Also, I want to give a face to a rare disease, and I want to also bring awareness to this category of diseases. Finally, I want to say that you should be your own advocate. If something does not feel right in your body, take care of it. And obviously, like, I do need to go on medication, but if you do the best to eat right, sleep right, drink water, everything, even though it doesn't necessarily cure certain things, and some things happen and it's inevitable, but it's gonna at least put you at a better, what's the word I'm looking for? Put you in a better position. Like, if I sleep right, drink the right amount of water, all of that, I'm less likely to have a flare-up. If you take good care of yourself, you're less likely to get sick. You're less likely to have severe COVID symptoms. You're less likely to get diabetes. Again, this does not put fault to anyone who that has happened to, who has taken care of themselves or hasn't taken care of themselves. Just take care of yourselves, be your own advocate, know about my disease, be there for people, and this is me, and this is me being honest with myself and with you, and let's keep fighting life. This won't stop me. I will still punch some people. Peace and love.